Hello everyone, and welcome to 2021 and welcome to our first live webinar of the year. Today we're going to show you around Quirkos. It's a simple tool for doing qualitative analysis and it helps you manage your data sources, it helps you manage your codes and your themes, and it helps you find insight and interesting things in your data without taking you too far away from your data, keeping you close and keeping you engaged with your findings. So I'm going to go through all the basics here today. There's a lot more information on our website and also a free trial which you can download and actually follow along with us today if you want to. All you have to do is go to quirkos.com. This is our website, and then at the top you can click on Get Quirkos and download. And you can download straight away there for Windows, for Mac or Linux. There's no difference between the download for the cloud version or the offline version. There's no difference if you're updating from an older version. It's the same installer for everyone. And so once you've downloaded and installed that, no registration is needed, especially if you're using an offline mode. Just wait for the download to come through. And you'll be able to install Quirkos directly on your computer. Now there are two different ways to work with Quirkos. So Quirkos Cloud is our new cloud-based storage option. And what that means is you're still using the app on your computer, but it means that you can, whenever you log in, you can access all of your data because the data is stored on our cloud servers. And that also means that you can share the project with other people and work live, so there's live collaboration in real time, and that's really handy if you're working remotely and working with a team of people. Now the other option is you can continue in the classic offline mode, and that's just like a normal piece of software where it saves the projects just on your computer. Obviously what that means is if you go to a different computer, then you need to copy the data over, and if you want to share projects with people you still can, but you have to email them or send them a link to how they can access your project data. So once you've downloaded and installed Quirkos, it's the same on all the different operating systems, and there's lots more information on the website. So there's a walkthrough video here, there's a step-by-step guide to the installation and to running through using the first project, and you don't need to register for any of our support materials. They're all available free on the website. Once you've installed Quirkos, you'll get a page that looks a little bit like this. So there's a sign-on option here if you want to use the cloud version of the software, and to do that you need to click on Manage Account to create an account. So if you want to use the cloud version, you do need to register for that there. So the login page once you've registered, but if you don't have an account, there's the sign up page here, and you can see all the different discount rates we have, but you won't be billed for anything if you're using the cloud version for 14 days. There's a free trial for 14 days for the cloud version and 21 days for the offline version. So once you're happy with whichever way you want to work, and you can try both of course, you can either click continue with local storage to work offline, but I'm going to work online and I'm going to log into my account, if I can remember the password of course. Good, I can. So you'll see at the top there's a list of projects that I've recently been working on, and down at the bottom there's projects which other people have shared with me. So if I want to work on a collaborative project with someone, I can just click on that project there, if it's actually still available, and we can be working on that together in real time. So that's super handy if you're working with large groups of people, when you're doing collaborative coding, and this project doesn't have a lot of work done in it yet, but I can go through and I can do a little bit more work, and I'll show you around all these functions in just a minute. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through the steps of actually creating a new project. So this is a project someone shared with me, and there's some chats going on here as well, so we can talk to each other in real time on the cloud. But I'm just going to click on Open New or Existing, and then I'm going to create a new project. Now you always need to create a new project in Quirkos before you can bring in your data, so that keeps all the data together. So a new project will always be the first thing you do when you're starting with Quirkos. Now we need to give it a name, and we're going to call this Focus Group Examples, because today what I'm trying to do is put together a series of papers which demonstrate how to use different qualitative methodologies. I'm doing this for some upcoming resources that we want to put up on the website. And today I've been looking at different papers that talk about different ways to use focus groups. So I'm going to use those as examples. Now, where most of the time people will use qualitative data like transcripts of interviews or focus groups for their data in Quirkos, or diaries or any other methodologies, well, you can also be very powerful to use it for literature reviews and systematic reviews. And so actually the sources of data I'm going to bring in today are actually journal articles, and I'll show you how that can be a very beneficial way to work with the data as well. Now there's an option here to password protect the project. Now I don't need this for this project, but if you do add an extra password, that's obviously another layer of protection, and it means that the projects are end-to-end encrypted. So that means that they are stored with a maximum and transmitted with a maximum level of security. There's also the option here for structured questions. Now that's super useful if you're bringing in data from a spreadsheet or an online survey, or you've done a structured interview where you're asking exactly the same questions to people in the same way. When you do that, the structured questions project means that you don't have to copy the questions that you've asked to each person over and over again. You can just type them out once, and then you can sort and filter by question across the different participants. The data we're working with today is unstructured, so we're going to leave that option off. And I'm going to click on the new project button again to create the project. Great, so that project's now been created in the cloud, and that's in my account. So wherever I log into Quirkos, I'll be able to access this project. And I can also share it with other people from the account page. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is actually bring in some sources of data. At the very top of the screen, you'll it says click to add source. Click on the top right button, this plus button here, and we've got a series of options here for how we can bring in different sources. I'm going to choose select files because I've got files on my computer I want to bring in, and I'm just going to go now into documents, and we've got example project. Oh no, not example project, example paper, sorry. And then I've got two PDFs which are for journal articles here, and I'm going to take both these in, so you can bring in multiple files at once. You can even bring in a whole folder at once. Now the types of files which are supported directly by Quirkos are PDF files like this, Word files, docx files, and text files, and rich text files, and also CSV files. So that's a common export from online survey platforms, or from Excel or spreadsheet software. So I've chosen that here. I'm just going to click on open button. Two sources have been successfully imported. That's great. And here we have them. So the right column shows the text sources that we have. We've only got two in this project at this stage. We can add some more later on. And the tabs across the top here allow us to go between the two different sources. They're actually from the same journal, but they're so far apart in age that they're actually they look quite different. I think the formatting has changed quite a bit in FQS over the years. So this one's from January 2010, and then the other one is from 2020, so it's last year. Now I've brought in these sources of data. I can just get straight going in and starting to code interesting things in there. But what I'm going to do first, and what's really useful, especially when you're doing a literature review, is actually to put in the metadata, the data which is about the source itself. So I've got these up on a table here because I've looked at these sources before. But if you click on a tab on the right here, you can change to the source properties view, and in here you can create any number of different ways that you want to describe the sources that you've brought in. So here, for example, I'm going to create a new property, and I'm going to call this one source type, I think. And I'm going to call this journal article. So for example, you might be bringing in things which are original sources of data. So they might be interview transcripts, they may be journal articles like this, they may be textbook chapters, but with the source properties we can describe what they are, and then we can sort and filter by those results later. So I'll also put in some other basic stuff. So the year 2020, and the and I'm going to put in author 1, and I'm going to put Groot C, or B, C, depending how you want to format it. And I'm going to put in author 2. And that's T-A. Good. So now I've got my basic stuff. Oh, we should put the journal in as well, and probably the title. But anyway, so it's from FQ. Oops, sorry. Journal FQS. But on and on. So we can keep bringing in all the different aspects of data that we have about it. So we may even have like volume numbers and so on. And what that means is that we can very quickly get attribution by the source later on, so we can very quickly see what article it comes from. Helps us if we're doing a bibliography, and then also it means that we can filter. So it might be interesting if we've got doing a big literature review to kind of see how it looks between different periods of time. So did the articles change and the context change specifically over the last decade compared to the previous decade? And you can do that by filtering by the year of publication. Or maybe you want to see particular authors, and then you'll see those as well. So for example, now I'm in the focus groups about looking at mothers in poverty in Netherlands. If I switch to the other one here, the one on East Germany, now you'll see we've got all these properties are already here. So the source type, but we don't have any values associated for them. So we didn't say, we didn't define anything for this particular source yet. But it's quite easy to do that now. So we'll just click on here and put in journal article. So it's a journal article. The year, well, it's not 2010, so we'll put in a new value. So this one's 2010. Author 1 is, let me look at this up here. Schaefer N, and it's also in FQS. So now we've entered this data, we can use it to filter our sources later on, and this is very handy to do things like side-by-side comparisons, which I'll show you in a minute. You can also get a graph of your properties. This is not very helpful at the moment. We've only got 2 articles, and we can see that 50% of our literature comes from 2020 and 50% comes from 2010. And these things would obviously get a lot more interesting if we have more data, but we can also see that 100% of the journal articles that we have come from FQS, basically because that's just where I've been doing my search for now. So now we define these sources, let's go back and start doing some actual analysis in them. So the thing that I'm really interested in here is how people have been using focus groups. So I want to have a couple of example papers about focus groups. So I'm going to create a code by clicking on this plus button here, which is called focus groups. Oops. I've got space here to put in a longer description, so if we need to be more clear about what that means, so we may have, or you may have a coding guide here, so the kinds of things that should be included and coded to this theme, and the kind of things which shouldn't or should go somewhere else. So there's plenty of space here for a longer description, and you can also choose the color. So you've got all these colors you can choose from. I don't know, I'll just go for some kind of turquoise. And there's an option to also create groups of codes, so you can create non-hierarchical groups of the codes. So I'll click on save, and we've got this bubble here for focus groups, and then we're just going to start reading through it and see what it says about focus groups, really. I can start with the other paper actually, because I've read this one a bit more, so I'm just a bit more familiar with it. I just want to skip down and look at some of the aspects that they've done there. So so here's an important theme, storytelling. So create a new theme for this, storytelling. Green is fine for that. And we can drag and drop these bubbles to move them anywhere around in this blue area on the screen. So I think storytelling is an important thing about focus groups, so I'm just going to select that text and drag and drop it onto the storytelling bubble. And this is an important paragraph on that as well. And so what you can see is the more you add to the bubbles, the more they grow. So you get this kind of sense of live kind of feedback about what's happening. Then we'll put this one in as well. Good. Okay, so that's obviously one way to go through and do the coding. we also, so this person's also saying they're critical about things. So I'm going to drag and drop that bubble onto a new one called critical, which I can create just by dragging and dropping the text onto the plus button at the top right of the screen. So now I've got that text already in critical. And what you can see here is that the text now overlaps. So this piece of text can be coded to as many different themes or codes as we think are relevant. We can break it up into very small codes and themes, and then one piece of text can belong to lots and lots of them. And that's represented here with these coding stripes that kind of show with a color-coded bar showing where that text is. And it also, if you hover your mouse over, shows you what the name of that source is. The name of the theme, sorry. Now, the other thing that we want to do here is, actually I just want to see all the places where somebody says focus groups. And we can obviously do a keyword search for that as well. So I click on the magnifying glass here, that starts the keyword search. I can click in here and put focus groups. We'll see what comes up. Now this is searching across all the different sources. Oh, it didn't come up with anything. Maybe it's focus group. Have a look here. Yeah, that's better. Okay, okay. So none of these papers say focus groups, just focus group. Okay, that's fine. So that's now shown us all of the times where the phrase focus group comes up. You see, it's only showing us the kind of one line there, but you can click here to expand the source around it so we can see the whole paragraph if we need to. An in-depth qualitative discussion using focus groups. Okay, that's great. So I want that sentence. So I'm going to select it and drag and drop it into focus groups. And I'm also going to put this actually onto another code, which is about, sorry, it's something I'm very interested in, which is research design. So they're talking about how they've designed the project. And I also want to capture things here like how they did recruitment and their sample size and how they arranged the focus groups. I'm really interested in how people decided what the participants should be in particular groups. So I can keep going through here, reading every time somebody said focus groups. Oh, that's just a... Okay, so they had, let's see. Remember those first images project. Read the day of time of weekly focus group sessions, 5 to 11 per class. Final sample included 9 groups, total of 67 students. Great. So I'm going to drag that onto focus groups. And I'm going to put that onto research design. That's exactly what I needed to do. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Great. So I can just click back on the canvas to see the canvas again, or I can close here the search view with the little X on the magnifying glass up there. That's great. So now I've really found some interesting quotes that I wanted to have from these papers, and I've got them marked as being in research design and focus groups. Now if I want to go back and look at those quotes that I extracted at any time, all you have to do is double click on the code, and then it shows you all of the pieces of text that you've assigned to that theme. So here's research design, and on the right you can see in-depth qualitative project was designed, blah, 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 good. Met with those expressed interest in the project, and I've got my sample size information there. That's what I wanted to have. That's great. Now I can also actually create new themes in here as well. So research design, I also want to have one creating a new theme underneath research design. So I'm still in the research design code, which is called sample size. And I'm going to select this piece of text and drag and drop that straight onto the sample size. So what I've done now is I had a very broad code basically, which was research design, and I wanted to have a more specific drill down into that, a subcategory which I've created called sample size. And I can create new ones in here as well. So maybe even sampling criteria. We'll give that a slightly different color now. It's all getting a bit similar, isn't it? And there was just students that wanted to participate, I think, so that's fine, but that was their sampling criteria. So now you can see that from that kind of broader topic on research design, we've used these subcategories here which we can create in this view to pull out the data more. And now if I click on sampling criteria, it just shows me that quote, which is just about how they chose who was going to be part of that. For the sample size, it's got that wider one. If we go back to research design, then that's got those whole kind of subsets there. So I'm just going to click on the home button now to go back to that main view again, and you'll see that this research design code now has new subcategories. And we can create subcategories in this view as well. We don't just have to do them in the overview. So if I click on the plus button here, I'll create a new one which is called, we've got sampling criteria, we've got sample size. Let's have recruitment, because that's actually subtly different, and I want to pull that out eventually as well. So I've created a new theme called recruitment. I don't even have any data on it yet. But I can drag and drop it onto this bubble here, and it'll pop out and be a subcategory. So now when I look at research design by double clicking on that, I've got my recruitment subcategory in there as well. So this is super useful to help you kind of like develop your themes and your topics. A lot of the time you may start with something very vague like research design and then decide you need to be more specific. And often the other way around, you may have things like, you may have separate codes for sample size. I can just click and pull and drag these out here. And then I may decide that I don't need these. So what I can do is I can right click on them. I've got lots of options here, but I can merge them together. So I'll merge this straight into the research design. I don't need to have the sampling criteria separate thing. And then all of those codes have gone in there together. So that's now all kind of been merged into one code rather than having those subcategories. Now, actually, I've now decided that I've changed my mind, but that's fine. So I can just click on the undo button here, and I can undo the merge, and I can undo all this kind of unpulling of those categories now. So there's full undo and redo in Quirkos for all of your actions. There's also autosave as you're going along. So you'll notice there isn't a save button along the top here, but save is basically being pressed for me after every button, whether you're working online or offline. So even if you pull the power cord out of your computer, or you get a crash or anything, you won't lose any data. You'll only lose at worst the thing that you were literally doing. So if you literally dragged some text here onto your bubble like that, and then it crashed as you were dragging that text on, that will be the only thing that didn't get saved. But the storage is extremely robust, and there's no autosave to turn on and off. It's constant save. And that really helps make sure that you're confident about not losing any of your data. So I've looked a little bit here at the codes, creating the codes, adding some text to the codes. I should also add at this point that this is a live session as it goes out, and there is a chat here as well. So if there's anything you want to be asking, or anything you want me to cover or talk about at the end of the session, do drop something in the chat, and I'll come and address it later. Now the next thing I want to show you is the comments, the memos feature, and that's accessed with this little ... memo button here. So that opens the memo column here, and basically it's a little bit like a kind of virtual post-it note space. So if I've got something here, so here's a quote which is actually quite depressing, so I'm going to drag and drop this code this text not onto a code, but onto the memos column here, and that will add a new little memo column here assigned to that piece of text. So I'm going to say, oh dear, what a sad story, because that's a very depressing quote. But if I click on that, it's assigned to that piece of text, and now anytime where I can see that text, I'll also see the memo that's attached to it. So you can use this obviously to facilitate things like IPA or line-by-line coding, where you may want to not jump straight into creating codes, but have comments. Obviously, en vivo coding is another great way that you can do that, and you can code these memos as well. So when you click on them, it selects that piece of text, and then you can drag and drop that straight onto a bubble. So we'll put that onto storytelling as well, because they are telling a sad story, and maybe we'll put this onto a new code which means sad. So that piece of text which is we have that memo attached to, if we double click on the sad bubble now, we'll see the memo is attached to it there, and we can edit this and right click to delete it at any stage. So the memos feature is very useful also for keeping track of your own kind of thoughts. It doesn't have to be part of a formal coding or analysis process, so you can use it just as an assistant to kind of help you read and collect your own thoughts on the data. Another way that you can do that is with the oops, sorry, the memo, the chat feature here. Now, the chat feature is used when you're working collaboratively on projects, so you can kind of talk to other people, but you can also use it even when you're working on a project by yourself like this, just to record your own kind of notes and comments. So, for example, if you want to keep a research journal, or an analysis journal, just keeping track of what you're doing and what you're finding here. So started my analysis today. Everything gets a time and date stamp. So you've basically got a way that you can always go through, record the history of your project and your analysis. Have started with basic descriptive coding. Might need another approach later. So it can be really useful to keep these kind of comments and thoughts together with you. And they're all super helpful when writing up, especially when you get to a stage where you're not quite sure why you created a code or why you decided on a particular approach. I mean, often in qualitative analysis, you try one approach and then shift to another one. And if that happens, you can make sure that you write down your rationale for doing that. And you may come to write up 6 months later and not remember why you did that. But it's great because you've got it all in your research journal here. I'm actually going to delete that one because it's got a typo in it. But there you go. So you can just toggle the chat off and on there with that button there. So that's the memos, that's the chats, that's the coding, and that's the stories. So let's look and see some of the other functionality that we have to help us explore the data. Now, you remember earlier we used the source properties here, and I'm going to very briefly show you how you can use those to filter some of the results. Before I do that, I'm just going to very quickly do some coding in the other project, the other source, sorry, because we've not actually done anything in here. Let's just put some things, random sources of data in for now. Right, great. So if I click on this button up here for the query view, the query view is where we can run different kinds of queries that basically filter the data and show us different parts of the project. So for example, here we've got these are the things we can run a query on. So we can run them on the property, the highlight author, the quirk author. So these things are very useful if you're working as part of a team or group. You can see who did what work and when. You can also look by the groups and the source titles, but we're going to keep it on the properties and we're going to go on year. So we want to see all the results from journal articles which were published in 2020. We'll click the update button. And now we're just seeing results from that one paper, Focus Groups, Mothers in Poverty. And if we change that to 2010 and clicked update, we would also see that now we've just got the results from the other paper. Okay, so this isn't very useful here. We've only got 2 sources. We're only exploring it by the journal publication year. But if you start to have a larger number of sources, and especially if you're using this for something like participant data like age and location and gender, then it's very useful to see, for example, all the people in one city compared to another, or all the people between a particular age range. So you don't just have this equal symbol here, you can also have greater than, equal than, less than, so you can actually have a whole range of dates and numbers that you filter for. And what it does is it shows you on the left, basically in descending order, which themes occurred the most in these sources. So for the 2010 paper, focus groups was the most common theme, but if we go back to the other one, 2020, it was, the storytelling. So maybe that's showing us something interesting. Well, we can also do a side-by-side comparison in this view. So there's a button here called compare. We'll click on that one there, and it basically splits the screen in half and lets us run 2 queries at the same time that are completely independent of each other. So we'll choose year here as well, in 2010, click on update, and now side by side we can see the differences here. So this is what one paper was saying about storytelling, and this is what the other was. We can also add more and more criteria here as well. So if we wanted just journal articles that were written in 2020 and that were written by Groot, this is just still that same paper, but you can make your queries more and more specific, or by flipping the and to an or statement even vaguer. So if you wanted, for example, remove that last one, papers that were published in 2020 or 2010, then obviously you would get, oh sorry, and let's change that to or, sorry, then you would get both of them. So now we're seeing results across both of those papers. So there's the East Germany one and the Mothers in Poverty one. So that's super helpful when you're wanting to kind of explore the differences between your different participants, between the different sources of data. Right, so now I'm going to go back to the home view here. But I'm just going to quickly mention that you can create reports from these views. So if you wanted reports for a particular subset of your data, you can run a query, filter those results, and then have a report exported which has just the quotes from that particular area. Now, talking about exporting quotes, that's obviously something that people will probably do quite a lot. So here's my research design thing. And maybe I want to export these quotes and put them into Word. So what I would do here is every time you see a quote in Quirkos, and that applies in that query view or this overview, or any of the other views I'm going to show you in a minute, you can just use these tick boxes here to select the quotes, the copy button here to copy them, and then say I did start Word. If it'll let me start it. There. So I can paste those that I copied in there. And I can also select them all here, copy them all. And then rather than just putting in one, we'll get loads of them. They also come with the attribution as well. So this is the name of the source that it comes from. So you always know where it came from. And again, that's super helpful when you come to write up, just to be able to very quickly pull together everything about research design, everything about storytelling when you're writing up that section in your paper or your thesis, and you've got those quotes, the most important quotes you want. You can choose the ones which you want to include, and they're already there and attributed in your data. Right, so I don't really need that. Okay, click on home here and go back to the main view. Okay. So the other thing I want to show you is the overlap view quickly. So a couple of other views I'm quickly going to go over, and then I'm going to open it up to questions after we've looked at some of the export options. So I'm going to right click on the bubbles here, and there's quite a few other options we've not looked at. The overview, the top one, now that's how we get the sort of, it's the same as double clicking basically. So that gives us the overview of the code, the data that's under it, and also any subcategories. The other option under that is the overlap view, which we'll look at now. Now that is basically it's like a Venn diagram that shows us the themes which we've coded together. So for example, this code here is coded to be about sad and storytelling. And also critical as well. So we can click on those and see what the overlaps in the data are. Now this is not very useful in this project because we've not done a lot of coding yet, but as you go on you can start to see the connections between the themes and the data. Whenever they overlap, Quirkos is counting that and looking for that, and that means it can show you this visualization and show you that storytelling is primarily sad at the moment, but it doesn't really interact with focus groups or sample size issues. And that's not surprising. We wouldn't really expect that to the storytelling aspect of the papers to overlap with research design elements, but we are interested to see that predominantly it's sad at the moment. There's only one overlapping code. That's the source that it comes from. But as this goes on in the future, this may actually be more revealing. So I'm going to click on the home button again to go back to main view. Right click here and show you some of the other options. So the edit here, this is basically the same as when you create the code in the first place. You've got the option here to change the title, to put in a long description, and to change the color. And when you change the color, it obviously updates immediately across all the different sources. So now if we go into one of the other sources, it's turned what was green has now turned orange. I'm sure we had a lot more coding in that other project. A bit further down, I suppose. Yeah, there is. And now it's all gone orange. So all that updates in real time. You've also got the merge option here, which I showed you briefly, and duplicate, which is also useful if you want to basically split apart a code into a couple of different ones. There's also delete here, and that will delete a theme from the project. Bye bye. But then you've always got the undo option to bring it back again. Now Let's look at some of the ways that you can export the data in the project. The export button here has got most of the different options. So we can create a report. Now the report is a very kind of comprehensive overview of the project. It includes a lot of data about the project itself, about the number of sources we have in there, how long they are in characters, how many quotes are in there. We can also see this is the summary of the quirks, the codes or themes in here, how many bits of text have been coded to them. We've got the properties graph here. We've got graphs of the canvas, and we can save these as images if we want to import them, or we can just actually drag and drop them directly into Word or something like that. And then we've got the text of the quotes here. So this is everything on the focus groups. And again, I might want to copy paste this just so I've got everything on the focus groups here. But there's also a lot of options to customize the report, so how it looks and how the data is ordered. So we can change things like, at the moment we've got all the text by theme, but maybe we want to have it by source, so everything from the particular papers. So this is now all the data that we coded paper by paper, and that may be more useful. And then we've also got our memos here. There's our one memo. And that's anyway, so when you're happy with the way that the report is and what sections you want in there, you can save it as a Word file. You can save it as a web page, and it's interactive in the same way, so you can share with someone, they can explore the data. You can also save it as a PDF file, and that's another easy way to kind of print it out, or to share with someone else that wants to see how you've analyzed the project. There's also a print button as well, obviously, so we want to directly print it. Now, one of the other useful export options is the word cloud. Now, the word cloud is a basic kind of visualization tool. It basically does a count of the number of times each word appears in the story, including this one, and AMP, which is obviously the way that the PDF files have been formatted from the journal. But anyway, we can remove certain ones like that using the stop words tool here. And we can also, so the stop words removes words that you don't want to have in there. So by default, it's got this list here of common words in the English language like not, it, is, that you're probably not interested in seeing. But then we've also got HTTP, because there's obviously lots of links in here as well. So let's get rid of HTTP. We don't want that in there. So we can see, what are we seeing here? Research, young. Okay, so both these groups are about young people. Groups, mothers, rural, empowerment. So these are the kind of things we probably expect to see. But we can also do it just by one particular source. So this paper, mothers and research and empowerment and participatory group, these are the important words coming out here. But with the other paper, okay, yes, young and rural, this is the one which is about people growing up in East Germany. So it's really interesting just to see, yeah, uncertainties, experiences, the difference in the language here. So that's very useful to get a kind of overview of the data in a very basic way. There's tons of things here you can use to customize the shape of it. We've got quite a lot of small words there, so we might want to actually just, the word threshold kind of stops words which, you know, we've got all these like shared, press, agenda, words that only appear once or twice. With the word threshold, we can turn those off, so we only get kind of the main words there. We need to do a little bit more tidying up here. But again, when we're happy with this, we can right click, we can save the image, we can copy it. Again, we can click and drag and put it onto Word or somewhere else. There's also a button here to directly save it as an image file. So that's quite a handy tool. There's also a CSV export here. I'm quite a big fan of this. It basically means that you can bring your data into Excel, into a spreadsheet kind of format. And when you've done that, it's super helpful to, let's see the quotes here. It just gives you a lot more options to work with the data. So here's the title of the quirk. There's the source that it came from. So those are the different quotes that we have there. And there's the actual quote. So that's the text that we exported from that. And basically, because we can do things like sorting, we can see things by code, by source, by author. by length, by color, anything you like. So that gives you a lot more options to play with the data and also do quantitative analysis on it if you want to. We don't have any kind of quantitative tools built into Quirkos. It's a pure qualitative tool. You've also got exports for the sources, the quirks, the memos, and the chat as well. So that will give you, well, not in our example because we've only got one message in there, but it will give you a really nice way to bring out your research journal if you're writing it in there. Don't need that, and don't need that. Great. Now the other export options here are, so there's a Word document export as well. Where's example papers? Now what this does is create a Word file of your transcripts back out, just as if you coded them with highlighters. So, oh, this is the one we didn't do much coding on, isn't it? Whoops. Oh well. There we go. There's some coding. So, so basically, it uses the comments feature in Word to annotate the transcripts back out and to show that you color coded and how you highlighted the data. So if you've not used qualitative software before but you're much more used to using highlighters, this means that you can always go back to that stage. You can always print them out, see the work that you've coded on the computer, and do more coding offline if you want to. So it's also a really good way to send someone, especially as a supervisor, the transcript and show them how you've coded and interpreted it. And then they may go through and have some questions about the themes or how you're applying them. So this is a really nice way to print out, especially if you've got a nice color printer to do that with. There's also the RefiQDA exchange standard. So this means that you can bring your data into other qualitative software like NVivo, MaxQDA, Atlas TI, Deduce, Transana, F4 Analyzer, and QDA Miner. All the different all the major packages now support this standard, so you can bring your coded data and all your sources together in and out of Quirkos, and that's super handy now because Quirkos is a very simple tool. So you may get to a stage where you want more advanced features, and then you can bring it into something like Atlas TI, or maybe you're coming from NVivo and you can bring all your projects that you've already done in NVivo into Quirkos and work with them further here. You've also got the option here to export the project just to save the sources. So if you want to do a coding attempt, it would basically just delete all the codes and coding, and to export the structure. So if you have a standard kind of coding framework, then you can save that and bring new sources into that. So that's pretty much the basics of working with Quirkos. Hopefully you can see how it's a useful tool for qualitative analysis, literature reviews and systematic reviews, and how kind of very visual and very engaging and colourful approach makes it kind of easy and fun to play with and work with your data. I've now got some time just to answer any questions if anybody's got any questions, but otherwise that's everything we wanted to cover today. Don't forget that you can download the free trials straight from our website. There's no registration needed. We don't take any of your personal data or anything like that unless you want to send it to us for the cloud subscription. And there are a lot more tutorials, a lot more information here. And also check out our YouTube channel. So there are a lot more videos, again, also on general qualitative methods. And we've also got a blog as well, which has, it's quite a good example actually, all of the different blog posts to help not just with learning Quirkos but with different types of analysis, tips for using qualitative methods, different types of methods that you can use, and things like, like doing open and axial coding, and it's yeah, a really helpful guide whether or not you end up choosing to use Quirkos. These are designed to be very kind of general articles. So I hope this has really been useful for you. Thanks so much for coming along today. Do go and download the trial of Quirkos, and always get in touch with us if you have any questions. We're always on Twitter, and you can email us support@quirkos.com, and we'll always be there to help you with your qualitative journey. Thank you so much.